We now know what caused the death of NASCAR legend Kyle Busch. Today,
NASCAR fans head into one of the sport's busiest weekends, still stunned by the death of Kyle Busch.
He's the Iron Man of NASCAR.
Kyle Busch gets it done. Wow.
Kyle Busch has run nearly 1,000 races.
Kyle Busch, a legend who raced until the very end. 4 days. That's all the time there was between Kyle Busch's last race and the day the sport lost him forever. He wasn't supposed to be at that race. He'd been battling a sinus cold all week. His voice was ragged. His body was fighting something his car couldn't outrun. But Kyle Busch strapped in anyway. Because that's what he did. That's all he ever did. This is the story of a man who never stopped racing. Not when critics doubted him. Not when the winds dried up. Not when his body was telling him to stop. A man who raced with everything he had, right until the very end. Kyle Thomas Busch was born on May 2nd, 1985, in Las Vegas, Nevada, a city built on big personalities and bigger bets. And from the very beginning, Kyle was both. His father Tom was a mechanic who raced stock cars on the side. His older brother Kurt was already making noise up the racing ladder. But it was Kyle, the younger, louder, fiercer one, who would rewrite the record books. He learned to steer a go-kart at 6 years old. His dad worked the gas pedal. His feet couldn't reach the controls yet. But the instinct? That was already there. By age 16, he was racing in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. 16 years old, he ran 6 truck races in 2001 and posted 2 top 10 finishes before NASCAR changed the minimum age to 18, a rule that paused his ascent but couldn't stop it. In 2003, he joined Hendrick Motorsports, the same organization that housed Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. He was the new kid in a very fast neighborhood, and from the jump, he acted like he owned the place. His nickname was Shrub at first, the little brother, the tag-along, but it didn't take long for a different name to stick. Rowdy, a nod to Tom Cruise's character in Days of Thunder, and an accurate read of the man behind the wheel. By 2005, Kyle Busch had his first Cup Series win. He was 20 years old. The NASCAR world had a new problem. In 2008, Kyle Busch made the move that would define his career. He left Hendrick Motorsports and signed with Joe Gibbs Racing, and the sport would never be the same. The numbers are almost hard to believe. 15 seasons at JGR, and in every single one of them, every single one, Kyle Busch won at least one race. That's 18 consecutive winning seasons dating back to 2005, a record that broke an achievement held by Richard Petty. Richard Petty, the king of NASCAR. He won his first Cup Series championship in 2015. But the road to that title nearly never happened. In February of that year, Busch shattered his right leg and left foot in a crash at Daytona. Doctors weren't sure he'd race again that season. He missed the first 11 races. He wasn't even eligible for the playoffs under the standard rules. NASCAR granted him a waiver, and Kyle Busch did what Kyle Busch always did. He came back, he dominated, and he won the championship. Then he did it again in 2019. At his peak, Kyle Busch was the most complete driver in NASCAR. He didn't just win Cup races, he raced and won in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series too, racking up victories at a pace that had no historical comparison. He surpassed 200 career wins across NASCAR's 3 major series. He passed 100 Xfinity wins. He became the all-time leader in Truck Series wins. He was, by almost any measure, the greatest multi-series driver in the history of the sport, and people hated him for it. Let's not sugarcoat it. For a long stretch of his career, Kyle Busch was the most booed man in NASCAR. He was cocky, he was aggressive, he said exactly what he thought, and he didn't apologize for it. He got into altercations, he had feuds, he made moves on the track that made rivals furious and fans pick sides. But here's the thing about Kyle Busch, and this is what made him genuinely special. He never tried to make you like him. He tried to beat you, and over time, the people who watched closely enough couldn't help but respect it. Because underneath the bravado was a driver who worked harder than almost anyone in the garage. A man who raced in the lower series, not because he had to, but because he loved racing. A man who ran Kyle Busch Motorsports and helped develop young talent. A man whose wife, Samantha, became one of the most visible advocates for infertility awareness in sports, and whose family, including son Brexton, became a part of the NASCAR story. The boos never fully went away, but they got quieter. And the cheers got louder. By the end, the narrative had shifted. The villain had become a complicated, deeply human legend. After 15 years at Joe Gibbs Racing, the partnership ended after the 2022 season. The split was prolonged, difficult, and public. And at 37 years old, Kyle Busch had to do something unfamiliar. Start over. He signed with Richard Childress Racing, stepped into the number 8 Chevrolet, and immediately silenced the doubters. In 2023, he won 3 Cup races, including a historic victory at Auto Club Speedway, where he broke the record for most consecutive seasons with at least 1 win. 19 straight seasons, every year since 2005. But 2024 was different. For the first time in his career, Busch went winless. He missed the playoffs for the first time since 2012. The newer next-gen car was proving difficult to adapt to. He admitted publicly that he was struggling to change driving habits built over 2 decades. The conversations about retirement grew louder. He was asked about it directly in 2025. "It was a consideration 3 years ago," he said. "I think daily you kind of work through those things, where you want to be and what you want to do." But Kyle Busch didn't quit. In 2026, at 40 years old, he was still behind the wheel, still chasing, still grinding. He won a Truck Series race at Atlanta. He won another at Dover in May of 2026, his 69th career truck victory, and his 234th across all 3 series. He competed in the Daytona 500, he went to Darlington, he showed up every single week with something to prove. He was still racing. On May 10, 2026, Kyle Busch raced at Watkins Glen International. During the race, he radioed to his crew. He needed a doctor. He needed a shot. Something was wrong. The broadcast noted he'd been fighting what appeared to be a sinus cold. He finished the race. He walked away. 5 days later, on May 15th, he was back behind the wheel in the Truck Series at Dover. And he won. 2 days after that, he competed in the NASCAR All-Star race and finished 17th. That was May 17th, his last race. On May 20th, he attended the opening of Andretti Karting in Durham, North Carolina. He was photographed smiling. He looked like a man enjoying the sport he'd given his life to. The next day, Wednesday, May 21st, Kyle Busch was testing in a Chevrolet racing simulator in Concord, North Carolina. He became unresponsive. Emergency crews were called. He was transported to a hospital in Charlotte. On Thursday, May 21st, 2026, Kyle Thomas Busch passed away. He was 41 years old. His family later confirmed the cause. Severe pneumonia had progressed into sepsis, a rapid, overwhelming cascade that left no time to fight back. The sport he'd raced in for over 2 decades, the sport he'd broken records in, won championships in, been booed and cheered in, went quiet. Here is what Kyle Busch left behind. 63 Cup Series wins, 9th all-time. 102 Xfinity wins, the all-time record. 69 Truck wins, the all-time record. 234 victories across all 3 of NASCAR's major series, more than any human being who has ever sat in a race car. 2 Cup Series championships, a streak of 19 consecutive winning seasons that may never be matched. He was the first driver to hold the all-time wins record in all 3 major NASCAR series simultaneously. He was the winningest Cup Series driver of the 2010s. He was a champion who refused to coast, refused to retire gracefully, refused to do anything other than race as hard as he possibly could. Richard Childress. Racing announced it was retiring the number 8. Not permanently, but until the day Kyle's son Brexton is ready to take the wheel. A third-generation racer just 11 years old who in 2024 alone won 48 races and earned 107 top 5 finishes. The legacy isn't over, it's just paused. NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell said it best in the days after his passing. Kyle was a future Hall of Famer. A rare talent, one who comes along once in a generation. He was fierce, he was passionate, he was immensely skilled, and he cared deeply about the sport and fans. Kyle Busch wasn't just a great driver. He was a contradiction that made sense only in NASCAR. The villain you couldn't look away from, the competitor you couldn't help but respect, the racer who never, not once, decided that enough was enough. He raced until his body wouldn't let him anymore. He raced until the very end.